oftentimes one of the first steps that we take in public sector rehabilitation counseling is looking to determine our clients eligible for services. And with this, we look at disability information and their anticipated vocational goals. But we need to understand who they are outside of their disability. So for example, their interests, their skills, their previous work history. And we need to understand what is required for the jobs that they might be interested in and do the two match up. For example, I know that accountants make a great deal of money, and so that might motivate me to pursue a job in that field. However, I'm terrible at math, and that's actually quite an understatement. I'm awful at it. And so even though I might be motivated to work in that field, my skills and capabilities do not align with what's required to be a professional in that specific position. So that would be a vocational goal that my job developer, my rehabilitation counselor, likely wouldn't, or they shouldn't, support. And we need to know how to get information about jobs to figure out, is this something that I can support, or is this something that I need to steer my clients in another direction or brainstorm with them? Similar jobs, but just maybe not this specific job. And there are, thankfully, lots of wonderful resources out there to help us be able to have these conversations and make these decisions. I always tell my students, I never would expect you to know everything there is about every job that's out there. But what I do expect you to know is how to get information about every job that's out there so that you can educate yourselves to help inform clients specifically. So gathering this occupational information, we use it to help, again, determine eligibility, to help us plan for, prepare, and write individualized plans for employment, to help us consider various job carving or job matching opportunities for our clients, and then ultimately to terminate our relationship for clients. It's a critical piece to every step of the rehabilitation counseling process. So now I just want to ask you for a moment to think, do you remember in public sector vocational rehabilitation what a successful outcome is defined as? And if you think back and ponder this for a moment, hopefully you realize that in the state government and public sector VR, we close cases and we define them as successful once we've gotten our clients jobs, they're happy with them, they were written into our plan, and they've kept them for 90 days. 90 days is the gold standard there. We're not just placing people and leaving. We're placing them and supporting them for 90 days to make sure that it's a good match, because that is critical, and that's part of the rehabilitation philosophy, is to have a good match between our clients, their interests, their skills, and what the employer needs and wants. So as I talk to you about that, I want to consider this image here for a moment. Successful placement is not just about our client, the person, and what their abilities are and what they need or want out of a job. It's equally as important to consider what the employer needs are. What are the requirements of a specific position? What rewards do they get by having our client work with them or having a diverse, qualified applicant pool or body of employees? It's these two things together, when they're both aligned, that we have what we determine a successful placement. We have an employee that is satisfied, an employer that is satisfied. And if you actually apply theory to this, and you remember this from career development, this term here is satisfaction, with the employee being satisfied, and then the employer satisfaction term is satisfactoriness. And together, these terms define the Minnesota theory of work adjustment. So again, that's that theory in place. So how do we put that into practice? Let me show you. So the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, again, very old school. And however, I feel strongly that for you to understand and appreciate more modern resources that we have available at our fingertips, we need to understand where we started. Because the DOT, which is what I'll refer to it from here forward, really set the tone and paved the way for some of these resources and websites that we might use more frequently today. However, this DOT is still applicable today. It has an interface that we can still use it to in my opinion, get the most out of current resources. So again, it's old school, but in order for you to appreciate and understand how we got to where we are today, I think it's important for us to go back a little bit and see what the first resources were and how they've evolved since then. So I always like to talk about the DOT with my students. The DOT, and one of the most important things about it, is that it has a 9-digit code. Every job out there has a 9-digit code associated with it. And the code is specifically meaningful. Every single digit of those 9 digits has a meaning and a purpose. And so the more that we look at the digits and we compare and contrast them, the more we understand about the job, and the more we can think about other jobs that our clients might be interested in. So let me show you how this works. The first 3 digits of the DOT code represent the job family that a specific job might be in. The second third of digits in the DOT code represent how that worker actually functions in their role at their specific job. And then the third set of digits is unique for every position that's out there. No 2 jobs will have the same DOT code because of the last third digits. So what that means is you could have a job that represents the same job family and has the same worker functions, but they're totally different job titles. So the last third of their DOT code will be separate. And I'll give you examples of this. So first, let's talk about job families, okay? So the first 3 DOT codes, it's category, division, finally, group. So any DOT code that has the second digit that's the same, you know that those jobs are in the same division. So they work similarly as far as that goes. And really, this is most important when we have jobs that have the same first digit, they're in the same job category, and maybe even they're in the same job division. So kind of let me show you an example of how this works. So when looking at those 9 digits in the code, the first code, again, representing occupational categories, here is a comprehensive list about what each of those digits can represent. So as you see, the DOT code for the first digit can be anything from a 0 all the way down to a 9, and each digit has specific meaning. So if you have a job and the DOT code is a 5, for example, the first digit is a 5, you know that that's a job that probably is in a process, it is in a processing occupation, so it can be something like machine work, manufacturing, massive production type of things. Alternatively, if you have a job that's a 2 as a first code, you know it's a job that might be in sales or some type of clerical work. So think for a moment, what do you think a rehabilitation counselor is? What do you think the first digit of their DOT code is based on these occupational categories? And I'll return to you in a moment to kind of show you what that looks like. But first, let's play around with these first 3 digits. So let's say, for example's sake, I want to pursue jobs that are in the occupational category of agricultural, fishery, forestry, and related occupations. So that first digit of their code is always going to be a 4. So I have 4 jobs. So now I'm looking at occupational divisions within that same category of fisheries, foresters, etc. So you can see that within that category, all these divisions exist. So you could have plant farmers, animal farmers, miscellaneous agricultural and related occupations, fisheries, forestry, hunting, etc. This is what the first 2 digits could look like for a specific job. And then if I clicked on 0 for the second digit, all of these groups exist. So you could see here that all of these jobs exist for agricultural What was the second digit? Plant farming, and then under plant farming, there are lots of different plant farmers out there apparently. Grain farming, vegetable farming, fruit and nut farming, field crops, etc. So really, the DOT categorizes things so specifically that it's a wonderful tool for us to think about jobs in a much more either crystallized narrow scope or a much more broad lens. And it helps us problem solve or think about job considerations for our clients. Again, if they want to do this one specific thing, but we know it might not be a good fit, we can help broaden that perspective for them. So we've talked about the first third digits. Let's talk about the second third of digits. So moving on here, we have digit 4, which represents how a worker, all three of these digits represent how a worker functions. The fourth digit in the DOT code represents how the job title or the job position interacts with data. The fifth digit here talks about how the worker functions with people. And then the sixth digit here represents how we interact with things. So what's really cool about this is you could have somebody, I'm going to go back to my farming example, who wants to be a fruit and nut farmer, okay? So they're going to have those first three digits be the same. I believe they were 403, for example. Let's say that's the first three digits of their code, 403. And we know that anybody who starts with the 403 code is a fruit and nut farmer. But how do fruit and nut farmers interact with data? How do they interact with people? Probably not a whole lot. How do they interact with things? Probably quite a bit. And so these digits each are meaningful because the way that this fruit and nut farmer interacts with data, people, and things might be different than how another type of farmer, so like a hunter or a vegetable farmer, may interact with data, people, things. And so those minute things can really, again, help us delineate between specific professions. So here's a look at what those, again, second, third digits look like extrapolated down. So as you can see, the fourth digit, remember, represents data. So how does this worker function in relation to data? Do they synthesize data, coordinate, analyze, compile, etc.? If they coordinate data, then their fourth digit is going to be a 1. Instead, if they synthesize data, their fourth digit is going to be a 0. And so it's important for us to kind of be aware of what those individual differences are. The fifth digit represents to how does that worker function in relation to people? Are they supervising people? If so, that fifth digit is going to be a 3. Are they serving others? If so, that fifth digit is going to be a 7. And then finally, the sixth digit represents to how does that worker function in relation to things? Are they setting up things? Are they working with precision tools? Are they operating? Are they driving? Are they feeding people, handling things? What's the way in which that worker functions with regard to things? So the second third of digits is important for us to understand, okay, does our client need to work with people quite closely within this job? Is that something that they'll be successful in, given what we know about their personality and maybe their disability? Or is it something we need to maybe be aware of? Using the code and understanding the code and what these digits mean, we can take that specific digit and extrapolate it out again and be able to manipulate it to think about other jobs in which they might be successful because we don't want them supervising others, for example. So that's kind of neat. That's why I like the DOT. So moving on, talking about the third digit. I told you earlier that no 9 digits are the same for different jobs. So let me show you an example of this. In our field, actually. So let's start with a marriage and family therapist. Their DOT code is in 045 107 054. Okay, so if you remember what the first 3 digits are, category, division, group, data, people, things, and then these are always separate and distinct. And the reason why we know that is because if I were to show you a rehab counselor, which of course I'm going to, their code is, and this shouldn't surprise you, 045107 042 is our code, because we work in the same category, group, division, and with data, people, things, the exact same way that a marriage and family therapist does. But because our jobs, as you all know, is very different from an MFT, we have to have specific and distinct last 3rd digits to distinguish us between one another. Similarly, if I were to show you an addictions counselor, their code again, I hope this doesn't surprise you guys. We're all counselors, but we work with clients in a variety of different capacities, and we specialize in very different things. What's neat about this? So I'm going to teach you guys in a moment how to do a crosswalk. Again, I want you to remember that term. If you've never heard it before, which you probably haven't, it's called a crosswalk. So the DOT is something that's kind of old school. It gives us all these digits, helps us compare and contrast jobs. But what if I was able to look at all the jobs that had the same first 6 digits? That would give us a comprehensive listing of all types of counselors that work with persons through difficult times. I'm thinking about things that we all have in common here. So it would open this up quite a bit. We might have school counselors, mental health counselors, all sorts of different professionals within the counseling field. Remember, O stands for the professional, and then we kind of extrapolate down. But how cool would that be if we were working with somebody and they said, okay, I want to be a counselor, but I don't know what kind of counselor I'd like to be. You could take a DOT code for a counseling job, crosswalk it, and just enter in the 6 digits. I'll show you how to crosswalk in a moment, but just keep this first 6 digits and get a whole list of all types of counselors that are out there. And then let's say that's not comprehensive enough. So let's say we want to see what else is out there. So the way that I start this is I would enter into my crosswalk. I would start by entering in the first 6 digits. And then, so I get all my counseling jobs. And then actually, if I wanted to break it down more, I'd take out the 6th. And so I'd know all the professionals that are in the same category, group, and division, but they work with data and people the same way, but we take out things. And let's say I want to see even more. Just work with data the same way, or things. Or even cooler, again, is what if I just look at jobs that are in the same category, group, and division? And so the way that this works is, let's say somebody comes into your office and they say, I would like to pursue a field as a marine biologist, or as a entomologist, or as a totally obscure job that you're completely unfamiliar with and have no idea how to counsel them. What you can do is you can figure out the code for a marine biologist or an entomologist, and you can plug it into some of these resources and remove some of the critical narrowing information of it, and then get a much more broader scope. And so while in St. Louis, we're probably, except for the zoo, not going to get somebody a job as a marine biologist, but we can figure out all sorts of other jobs that are in the same category, group, and division that might interest them and that we could actually be helpful. But we need to know, how do you do this? Where do you find all this information at? So for practice sake, I'd like to ask each of you, which of the following professionals do you think is most likely to have the first digit of their DOT code be a 3? So we have an administrative assistant, a dry cleaner, a landscaper, or a construction worker. And so if you remember, that first digit is meaningful. It means something specifically. So let's go back to looking at the occupational category, the first 3 digits. In that specific occupational category, the first digit, the third, I'm asking you what's most likely to be the first digit be a 3, are service occupations. So which one of these jobs is more likely to fall under the service occupational field? My answer to this question is it's going to be the dry cleaner. Even though the administrative assistant provides a service to others, that's clerical work, the landscaper is doing more of the agricultural work, and the construction worker is doing more of the processing or labor work. So that dry cleaner is going to be a 3. And so I don't want to mislead any of you thinking that I dream at night about digits in the DOT code and they're all canned and memorized in my head, because that's not true. You throw me up a DOT code, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's a firefighter. I don't know it in and out, and you don't have to know it in and out either. But what I want you to know is that each digit has a meaning, and I want you to know the meaning behind each digit so that you can use this tool to help serve your clients. And if you understand how to use this tool to help serve your clients, you're going to understand the more modern tools where all this algorithm is built in far better than your colleagues, certainly. You're going to understand the deeper levels of what we use in the field today. So this is just an image to kind of show you that 9-digit code. Again, the first digits represent categories, divisions, groups. The second digit, data, people, things. And then the third is all about occupations. Each digit has a purpose. Each digit has a meaning. And removing digits in a crosswalk, which we're going to do now, helps you broaden the scope to help clients think about their future. So, if you haven't before, I'd like you to sign on to the Occupational Network websites, to ONET, as that's what we call it in the field. And in ONET, you're going to see in the toolbar a little drop-down menu that says Crosswalk. And once you pull down that drop-down menu for Crosswalk, you're going to see an option for the DOT. I want you to click on that, and I want you to enter in a DOT code for rehabilitation counselors, for example. And you can get that again from going on the Dictionary of Occupational Titles website, and then play around with removing a digit and seeing what options expand for you as you do this. And so take some time doing that and get comfortable with doing a crosswalk to better educate yourself and your client about opportunities.